Guys, it's hard to believe that next week we will finally be experiencing the Into the Light update. Today though, we're gonna be breaking down everything we saw in that live stream. This is gonna be a pretty comprehensive breakdown, so if there's something you wanna key in on specifically, we do have timestamps down below. Big shout out to the gents at Bungie though. Again, Andy and Tom, this time joined by Rob Adams, who is the art director, and Willie Chang, who is the activity designer. Now, both of these guys worked on the Whisper mission in 0 Hour mission, which if you couldn't tell by now, are returning to us. Like, I just want to point out, fellas, we called this nearly a month ago. Okay, maybe not Outbreak perfected, but we did call Whisper returning. And Bungie also made it very obvious for us, considering they have both the gun models for Whisper and Outbreak in the room with them. Now, before we get into this dive, Andy did give us a quick reminder, and again, this is just confirming what was already put out on Twitter, that the Brave weapons will be releasing on April the 30th. So no, this doesn't necessarily get rid of the time gate completely, but instead of 6 weeks to get these Brave weapons, it will only be 3 weeks, which is a lot better. And by the way, before you jump up and say, Cross, why would I want another Whisper of the Worm or another Outbreak Perfected? Keep in mind, both of these exotics will be craftable, meaning they will have a trait added onto the weapon, and in some cases will make these weapons substantially better. Now to start the breakdown off, Rob opens with the origin of the Whisper mission. He mentioned that the first few months of Destiny 2, many at Bungie thought there just wasn't enough secrets, and Destiny 2 needed something to be found by the players. And they hoped that the mission would be exciting and would go over well with the community, which it did. I still remember whenever the mission dropped on us. And you gotta understand, back then, guys, this was like before data miners and stuff. We actually had true secrets, like true surprises. When things dropped on us, it felt like it came out of nowhere. Now, there was a lot of nostalgia for Vault of Glass and Black Spindle from Destiny 1. And one day in a meeting, they just talked about making another Black Spindle mission, but making it a lot bigger. They showed the first whiteboard concept art for the mission, which showed off their ideas. And we see some of the narrow platforms with a jumping puzzle, a branching pathway. There was an unspoken agreement between developers and hardcore players. The deal was that if players can pass a test where your mind will be tested, and then your combat abilities will be tested, and your movement, if you can pass those 3 tests, you would be rewarded with great power. And in this case, Whisper of the Worm. Now for Whisper, they didn't want a driving narrative and other things within the mission itself, making it obvious what to do. They wanted it to be mysterious, especially mechanically. This was definitely a mission that they mentioned was to appeal to hardcore players. Let them figure it out first, and then they bring their friends in and teach those players how to get through this mission. Now, when designing the Whisper mission, they wanted this intense mystery vibe, but that mystery also has this overlapping feeling of dread. And if you've played through this mission, guys, you know multiple instances of what they're talking about here. It was funny that Rob mentioned that some of the inspirations they got came from watching Stranger Things and listening to the soundtrack, and they would just listen to it over and over, and that was used as inspiration for the traversal section. Then they showed a picture of the green room. Rob talks about bringing this room to life. They wanted to make a room with a trap in the center, and if you go down the trap, you would be punished, and if you got out, you would end up back in the same room. Now it's funny, they mentioned that there was a smaller version for it to playtest that Cosmo, Dylan, and other playtesters and designers got to experience, and they just sat down and waited for someone to find the hidden shortcut, and when it was found, they screamed with excitement. Hell yeah, we did. Shortcut's way better. Now this reaction was extremely positive, and they knew they had something good, which is when they took that room and scaled it up, and that's the room that we received. Funny enough, Rob said that he listened to the first 6 Black Sabbath albums that allowed him to really hone in on the vibe of this mission. Now we got to see some gameplay of the Whisper mission, but not a whole lot. Again, they cut it off pretty short, just showing us the intro traversal. The developers talked about how in today's sandbox, that we have a lot more power, and playtesters could clear rooms of ads very quickly, which is why they've had to beef up the number of combatants and encounters. Now to enter the Whisper mission, you no longer need to wait for a public event. Now obviously we couldn't do this because IO is literally gone, but once this mission is live, we will speak with Eris Morn, who's gonna tell us, quote, cool stuff. Now the mission has undergone more changes besides just combat. The goal was to make the mission fresh to veteran players, and they mentioned that the secrets and surprises in the chests are different, and all the old guides will actually need to be remade. They even talked about how originally when you first get in, there's a secret chest room on the right, but the anomaly has taken it, and it's no longer there. And Willie actually mentioned that he's excited about the way that they've altered the boss fight. But again, they didn't talk on it any further, and they moved on from this very quickly, stating that we just need to experience it for ourselves. Now the next section, they talked about the 0 Hour mission. Now this being the mission for Outbreak Perfected. Now the most iconic thing from this mission is of course Trevor. Now for my new players, Trevor was the scariest thing you've ever seen in your life, and could easily wouldn't be one to witness. Now Bungie starts to explain the original concept for Trevor. It was stated that it was inspired by the Japanese game show called Takeshi Rishi's castle. And they said they borrowed from that show for a long time. And it was mentioned that they described there's a bit where the contestants try to go up a hill, and then there's this big fake boulder that comes down with little side pockets that they can try to get into, and they wanted to put something like that into this mission. Actually sounds very familiar to Grasp of Avarice, literally, as there's a ball that rolls down and you get into the side pocket. And Trevor was originally called the Hazard. We saw the whiteboard concept art of this mission with the hallway with little side rooms, which then evolved into a maze. The first concept art of Trevor looked too much like a vacuum cleaner, which didn't quite nail the fear that they wanted. But far right, we see the final iteration with the centipede legs, as well as the big red light on the top. Now, it's funny that they mentioned that they gained satisfaction from scaring people. They wanted to tackle how to make a guardian feel scared in the game. The idea was to drop you in a maze with something in there that you can't kill. This something is also faster than you, and it's not like you can jump up or even run away from it. You literally have to hide in those cubby holes. It was funny though that Rob mentions how scary the centipede bottom is. It seems like a real genuine fear of Rob's. Now the final piece was putting a super bright light on Trevor that shines on you, so as you're running away, you can see your own shadow. I love it. Now they showed some of the intro gameplay of 0 Hour. There's some more ads. There's a brig there now. Overall, just more ads in this combat encounter, but they wanted to maintain the soul of the activity with the time pressure and powerful enemies. Willie says that when they play tested the activity with all the new movement abilities such as strain grapples, swords, etc., they were expecting to just breeze through everything, but it actually translated over pretty well. And the sections are self-contained enough so they can't be bypassed too much, quoting that it still felt like 0 Hour. Now for both of these missions that were shown, the regular versions will have 40-minute time limits, and the legend versions will have a 20-minute time limit, which is where the secrets will be. Now in terms of other changes to 0 Hour, they say the whole secret setup is different. Previously it had key cards, and they say that it's been replaced, which we'll need to find out for ourselves. Willie also mentioned how proud he is of the boss fight and the changes they've made to it. Then they talk about the original meaning of Trevor. They love the name, as it was very paradoxical for Rob, as he had a friend named Trevor, and he was the nicest person you could have ever met. But in this game, he's extremely deadly, hence the paradox. Now, the original abbreviation standing for Tracking Robotic 3-Vectored Reducer. But then at GuardianCon, they decided to let the fans decide what that acronym should be, of which they landed at Tamed Relax Triple Vac Roommate. Lol! Then we get to look at the craftable versions of Whisper and Outbreak. Whisper was the first one they started off with though, guys, and it has all the normal barrel options, but for its magazine, we have things like Aztecross rounds, flared magwell, alloy magazine, and steady rounds. Nothing there boosting our mag perk, but if you take things like alloy, upon shooting all of your shots, you of course would get that faster reload. Now for our perk options, we have Mulligan there, which is exactly what we have currently with Whisper the Worm, but now you can slot it out for field prep, no distractions, or inline action. Now field prep of course increases your reserve ammo. I'm not sure if that's necessary though, considering that they mentioned Whisper's going to be getting a buff, going from 18 to 24 rounds. This is a sizable buff, guys. So much so that I don't know if field prep is actually necessary. No distractions may be the play, because by the time you're proccing no distractions, you'll be proccing whispered breathing, that being its box breathing part. No distractions will literally mitigate any incoming gunfire you may be receiving, therefore making it much easier to land those crits. And I think that's going to be the play for me. Now for the craftable Outbreak, this one looks so juice. It's got its normal barrel and magazine options, with more magazine options than that of Whisper, but for its perks, it starts with its classic Outlaw, but then we see Rapid Hit, which is beautiful for something like Outbreak. But next to it, we have Rewind Rounds. Let me just say this, guys. Rewind Rounds on Outbreak is going to be nuts, especially considering the nanites you're going to be spawning. Those things are going to be feeding and proccing Rewind Rounds even more, or at least we assume. And the final trait here is Headseeker, which is probably going to be the go-to trait for many of us inside of PvP. Now, it has the same exact exotic trait in Catalyst, but it has a number of stock options to choose from. And I think people tend to overlook what stocks can do, but they do a lot. Everything from boosting your handling greatly to boosting your stability, or a combination of the two. This is going to make Outbreak feel really good. And considering lightweight pulse rifles are also getting a buff next week, Outbreak is setting itself up to be a dominant weapon in the next sandbox. Now, the developers mentioned for both of these weapons, if you already have the Catalyst unlocked, you can actually craft it right away once unlocking the pattern. Otherwise, you can proceed to unlock the Catalyst through legend difficulty. Now, for unlocking the craftable traits, there will be a 3-week mini quest line that rolls into the secrets. The Whisper mission will launch with Into the Light on April the 9th, and 0 Hours coming in May. And I'm pretty sure these are going to be a month apart. Now, there's also going to be ships that are making a return in these missions, but they aren't the exact same ships. So for my folks that still want to flex the originals, by all means, go right ahead. The new ones have been updated though with new assets. For 0 Hour, they took the old scrap together drifter ship that was described as not very loved loved by the community, but they've done a pass on it which was inspired by the look of Outbreak Perfected. But come on guys, you don't like the original? Sexy! Now for Whisper Ship, 1,000 Wings will have a new design as well. Now moving into the next section of this reveal, Bungie showcased the PvP map pack that they're going to be bringing to us next week. They were joined by Cooley Callan, who is a staff artist and has worked on many PvP maps. Things like Burning Shrine was his baby, which is also known as Burnout inside of Destiny 2. Midtown was also one of his babies. I was waiting for him to say Disjunction, but nobody said anything about that map. Now, Cooley is a part of the PvP strike team, which is described as being stacked. The focus on these 3 new maps was on 3v3 competitive first, but they were also designed to make sure that they work elsewhere. Now, they mentioned they needed to strike a balance between having a playground for Guardians to express themselves and their playstyles, but they mentioned there's lots of movement and a lot more verticality. Now, the first map they showed was on Europa, called Eventide Labs. It is a long-forgotten human colony research outpost, and it is being used by Aramis as a refueling station for her catch. You can actually see it in the skybox. It's quite massive. There's also a servitor hooked up, and there's a lot of different fallen structures along with the normal ice structures that you see on Europa, and they give us a small walkthrough of the map. Looks pretty good. The main takeaway for this, guys, is Bungie wants to showcase the different sightlines and where you can engage with enemies. You know, you've got your close quarters, you've got your longer sightlines. Again, for Bungie, that is a successful map. Now, there was a ton of folks that was comparing this map to Thieves' Den. No lie, I would love Thieves' Den back. But yeah, there is some similarities here, especially with that fallen theme. Now, the second map they showed is on Neomuna, called Cirrus Plaza. Guys, this is such a cool looking map. It's a shopping entertainment center though. They say that this map is very clean and readable, and they think that competitive players and diehard PvP players are gonna really like this one. Now, it has that big pit in the middle, which initially I thought was gonna be an area we could go down, and maybe there was like chutes that could put you back up in the air or bring you to that next level. That's not the case. That's just a dead zone. But you can jump up on the top of this wall and kind of gain some high ground. So far though, it looks like a pretty classic 3-lane map. It's also quite small. They talk about the clean zones in PvP, which is something designers use to allow players to pop and stand out from their surroundings. Now, I showcased this Halo map on the stream because this was the vibe that I was getting from it. But again, you're not having multiple levels. There's no ramp structure and 3 different levels and an elevator chute. That would be cool. Something does make me wonder, Bungie, have you guys tried to introduce some of those maps? Perhaps that wouldn't work though, right? Like, can you imagine pushing up the chute to just be met with conditional finality over and over? Well, considering the special ammo changes, it may not be that bad. Now, the third map is on the terraformed pyramid ship called Essence. Rob stated it was tough to design this map and that it inherently has a very noisy palette. The geometry creates a lot of shadows. There's also clutter of different colors and shapes, but it does look quite nice. And honestly, there isn't a lot of clutter around the actual playable areas. But guys, this place is beautiful. Like, there was one part where you can look up at the Traveler and literally see the portal. Now, on one of the sides, the map is rounded out some. You actually have a platform you can jump up on. There's an ammo box that sits underneath it. This is where B flag will be for control. And in the center, there's these dueling huts on each side. Then in the middle, another platform that you can go inside of or even go on top of. And there's a hole even on the top to shoot people through or drop down on. Now, back of A spawn, there's a lot of staircases leading up, but it is a bit more open. But both sides of the map, A and C, seem to have a couple of different pathways to get in and out of. Now, these maps will be launching on May the 7th, and there will be a 3v3 playlist with these maps. Now, to wrap up the stream, they had a few more announcements, and these were pretty big announcements. Pantheon was mentioned in last week's TWAB, and they brought it up again here. This will be a raid boss gauntlet, where you will have the opportunity to face grueling raid bosses in a weekly challenge with escalating difficulties and rewards. Now, they mentioned you can get exotics, adept weapons, emblems, and that they're going to be giving more details in this week's TWAB. And there's also going to be a brand new title for Into the Light called Brave. Now, the best thing that I heard was that if you have friends that want to try Destiny for the first time, when Into the Light launches, new players will have the option to skip the Shohan questline, that being the New Light questline, completely. You can just choose your subclass kit and go straight to the Hall of Champions, hit the Gift of Thunder God's chest, and boom, you are now leveled. This means that your friends can literally jump into content, be leveled up, and play the newest content for free starting next week. Now, we also have the ability to finally change our character's appearance, which was talked about earlier this year, and everyone will be receiving one more name change token as well. Now, when they ended the stream, they gave one final announcement. They stated that on April the 9th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific, before Into the Light launches, there will be a Final Shape developer gameplay gameplay preview. This is wild. I thought we weren't going to see anything about the final shape for at least another month. I'm really curious to see what they have to show us though. For those interested, we will be live next week watching that stream. You can come by, you can hang out with us. I have no idea what they're all going to show us. Again, we already got like a Vidoc last year, the reveal of the final shape. So I'm curious to see what exactly is going to change from last year's reveal to this year's. But if you're interested in watching any of that live with us, guys, feel free to come by our stream. We'll be watching all the previous trailers and Vidocs for the final shape. We'll also be getting a refresh on some of the general lore. So I would love it if you guys joined us. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching. And as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.